Hey guys, hey YouTube family, hey Hauling Apologetics family. Um, so this is Hauling Apologetics, where we discuss the reasons for Christianity. We discuss how God is real, how the Christian faith is real. These are things that we discuss. We're open to questions. You can email me at krammesapologetics@gmail.com. That's KRAMMES apologetics@gmail.com. You can shoot me an email if you have any questions about Christianity or anything along those lines, or even about the existence of God. I'm more than willing to talk with you, maybe even set up a Zoom meeting with you, and we can do something along those lines. That would be perfectly fine. That being said, last week I was talking about the grace only movement and how our works are the evidence of God's grace in our life, rather than God's grace being a ticket for us to just continue doing what we were doing and just having paradise to boot. Man, that would be truly amazing, wouldn't it? But what would that really do? What would that really accomplish? So our works, what we do, is the evidence of God's grace in our lives. So this week I'm taking a completely different spin, and I'm going to cover this over the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to discuss really the historicity of Jesus today. A lot of this stuff comes from a wonderful, wonderful book, from a wonderful, wonderful apologist. His son is also an apologist as well, but his name is Josh McDowell. And the book is called The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict. That's the book that I'm reading from, or working from, rather. And it's a great book. It does not read like a normal book, okay? So it's it's a great resource. It has a good table of contents, and really the way his outline presentation of it is, it's just absolutely amazing. You can go and literally just dive in to whatever question that you may have. It's really exhaustive. He also has another book that was written before this, which is called The Evidence That Demands a Verdict. So it's a great book. You should definitely get it, even if you don't believe, because there is evidence out there. The question really becomes, are you willing to accept the evidence, or are you just really altogether just wanting to live your life, and honestly, it's your choice, it's your will, it's whatever you choose, and you know what, I'm still going to love you the same. That being said, I really kind of want to dive into this. So I've told you today we're talking about the historicity of Jesus. And this question has been raised many times about whether or not Jesus was actually a real person. Did Jesus even exist? And so there's certain people out there, but the vast majority of scholars will admit that Jesus did exist. But if Jesus didn't exist, then I really have no reason to make this video. I have no reason to be talking to you. And honestly, if Jesus didn't exist, this video wouldn't be made. There is evidence out there for just his existence within itself, and that's what we're seeking to do, is just talk about his existence and the fact that he does. I'll get into whether or not he was truly deity, whether he was a lunatic, liar, or Lord, as C.S. Lewis likes to put it, or liked to put it. Plus, if Jesus didn't exist, the Christian God certainly wouldn't exist. And so, anyways, during this video, I want you to accept a couple of presuppositions. or over the course of the next few videos that I do, I want you to accept just a couple of presuppositions. That doesn't mean that you are believing them. I just want you to hypothetically accept them. Should you have found evidence that God exists, should you have found evidence of the Jewish faith having been a lot to do with that particular God. Those are some presuppositions that I want you to be willing to accept hypothetically for the purposes of this video and other videos that are following. Because there is evidence for God existing out there. Whether you choose to believe that or not is completely up to you. There is evidence, however, for the existence of God. So that being said, I would like for you to just hypothetically accept some of these presuppositions. That way, when you're listening to this, you can listen to it with a logical perspective, and you're not going, but God doesn't exist through the video. Trust me, I've watched plenty of videos where it's like, you know what, I need to at least allow certain things because they're trying to make a certain argument here. And I need to take the willingness to attempt to understand where they're coming from. And I think that's a loving and diplomatic thing to do, is to just try to understand one another, even though we may be different in how we view things. So that being said, let's go into this. So today I ask that you cast away the possibility that God might not exist. I want you to come to a point of having your mind open, and you may not believe in the existence of a deity. That's fine. You are certainly able to have that belief. But let's say a God hypothetically exists over the next couple of videos, and I'm going to show you the person of Jesus Christ, who the person of Jesus Christ was, in fact, a historical figure, and that he was, in fact, who he claimed to be, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, God incarnate, and Emmanuel, God with us. So, like I said, just, bear with me. Accept a couple of these presuppositions. We're speaking hypothetically. If you don't believe, it's a hypothetical here. Personally, I do believe so. For me, this is not even close to hypothetical. So there are some that are like Bertrand Russell who think that God doesn't even exist. And in an essay that he had written, he had claimed that it was doubtful if Jesus had actually even existed. And he also claims that if he in fact did exist, that we do not know a whole lot about him. And this can be found right there in Josh McDowell's book in the section titled Jesus, a Man of History. All the material that you're going to see me bringing out today is actually going to be coming from that section, Jesus, Man of History, which starts on page 119 of his book. So our argument here is that we actually know quite a bit about the person of Jesus. We actually know more than Bertrand Russell in his essay is leading to believe. And there are others who are out there that believe it. Bertrand Russell is just more of a more famous person to name. But there are others out there who don't believe that Jesus even existed, or as Bertrand Russell had stated, that even if he had existed, we don't know a lot about him. So our argument and our contention is that he did exist, and we actually know more than people realize. So first, we have the Gospels. These are, included. This is evidence, that Jesus existed, And the Gospels, one of the things that they're saying, it was like, one of the things that the Gospels, a lot of people want to say that, the reason why the Gospels don't work is because the Gospels are biased. But even if it's biased, you'll accept certain news sources like CNN, MSNBC, and the Fox News. There's not always complete truth in them. So even if you were to say that this doesn't have complete truth, the fact that it mentions Jesus across the board, is just evidence of his existence within itself. You may not believe what's actually in him, but the fact that Jesus is mentioned across the board, that right there within itself is evidence of his existence. Is contemporary to his time. This is contemporary to his time. That there are arguments by historical critics. I think that's what they're called. there are arguments, and what they believe is that a lot of these scriptures were written longer periods after the death of Jesus. However, there's actually really good evidence that shows that these were actually written close to the time of Jesus. Secondly, you have the different letters by many different authors as to the historicity of Jesus. Chiefly, Paul is the author from among them. Paul happens to be one of my favorites. I know Gary Habermas talks about him as well. He has, he had a total, according to Christians who believe it all, 13 total letters. However, most skeptical scholars will only accept a few of these, and I think it's like about 6 or 7 were actually Pauline scriptures. But you're looking at the Pauline letters were written 10 to 30 years after the death of Christ. I mean, you're boom right here. What's also interesting about Paul, he's not just talking about the existence of Christ. He's not just he's talking about the existence of Christ as Lord. But what's interesting about Paul is before he came to push Christ as Lord, before he came to a point of pushing Jesus as Lord, he was at a point of killing Christians. What is going to bring a man who is killing Christians to being a Christian himself, being the very thing he set out to kill, being the very thing he set out to disprove? What's going to cause that person to be that? There's some evidence, and that's going to happen in some of the next videos that we're going to discuss. And then there are extra biblical sources. So these are sources that are outside of the Bible that also support the existence, just the existence, and this is all we're talking about, is the existence of Jesus and the fact that he did exist. And there are extra biblical sources that speak to the existence of Jesus Christ, and all of these were written by people that were contemporary to Jesus' time or just a generation removed from Jesus' time. So when it comes to all these documents, as they are examined by historians, this is historical pay dirt. Okay, you don't have this much historical pay dirt on Alexander the Great, and the most reliable source, according to Gary Habermas, that we have of Alexander the Great is 300 years after his death. Yet we know and will not argue any of the facts that we claim to know about Alexander the Great. But when it comes to the person of Jesus Christ, man, we even question his existence, and we have more information on him than we do on Alexander the Great. Isn't that really interesting? This is historical pay dirt for historians, and the fact that we can tell this much about a random dude from Nazareth is staggering. There wasn't a lot of randomness about this man. There wasn't a lot of randomness about this man that we would have this much information, and this much information would have survived, and this much information. We have so many manuscripts, but we're just... we're just talking about his existence here. So the chief argument among scholars is that these are reliable documents, and even if there is a little bit of unreliability, when it comes to speaking of the man himself, that much is reliable information. Just the fact that he existed is reliable. You may not believe in the miracles that he claimed to have performed. You may not believe that he is God as he claimed to be. But the fact that he did exist, the fact that he did die, and my contention for later videos, the fact that he did rise again from the dead, are all historically reliable. Now, the resurrection is historically reliable from Scripture, and yes, we use Scripture there, but there's also Jewish statements that show that the tomb was in fact empty. So those are things that we're going to look at in later videos. We have no reason but to conclude that Jesus did in fact exist. We have no reason but to conclude this. So there are other arguments that McDowell makes for the historicity of Jesus in his book. And in his book, in the aforementioned section, which is Jesus, a Man of History, he demonstrates that there are secular authorities that wrote and verified the existence of Jesus. And by secular authority, we are referencing those who did not believe in Christ as the Messiah. They didn't believe in him as God. They just knew he has existed. They didn't believe that he was the one who came to redeem the lost. In their opinion, and based off of what they believed, They didn't think that we were lost and the lost needed saving. A lot of these, they were Roman. A lot of these were Roman secular authorities, and so a lot of them were what we call polytheistic. They believed in many different gods, and a lot of that was the god of the Gapsiri, which you'll hear brought up by a lot of different people. So by authority, we are referencing one who is a contemporary of Jesus' time or a contemporary to the followers of Jesus. Because they fit this bill, they can be used as a way to verify the historicity of Jesus Christ. And the first of these is Cornelius Tacitus. And I'm going to briefly mention him and describe him. And then I'm just going to mention a bunch of others. And honestly, if you guys want to know more information, either A, consult Rabbi Google, or go get the book, The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. Challenge yourself. If you're willing to put what you believe on a level playing field with everything else, let that which is most logical rise to the top. And I promise you, this is what I did, and Christianity rose to the top. But according to Habermas, who is cited in McDowell's book, Cornelius Tacitus has been called the greatest historian of ancient Rome. Not only that, he was acknowledged for his moral integrity and his essential goodness, and he wrote during the reign over half a dozen emperors in Rome. Now, during the reign of Nero, Tacitus wrote referring to the death of Jesus Christ and to the existence of Christians in Rome. And this is an excerpt of what he said. But not all the relief that could come from man, not all the relief that could come from man, not all the bounties that the prince could bestow, nor all the atonements which could be presented to the gods, availed to relieve Nero from the infamy of being believed to have ordered the conflagration, the fire of Rome. Hence, to suppress the rumor, he falsely charged with the guilt and punished with the most exquisite tortures the persons commonly called Christians, who were hated for their enormities. Christus, the founder of the name, was put to death by Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea in the reign of Tiberius, but the pernicious superstition, repressed for a time, broke out again, not only through Judea, where the mischief had originated, but through the city of Rome also. Now, this excerpt clearly states the existence of Jesus Christ, the existence that he did exist. He was tried under Pontius Pilate. Tacitus is affirming this. This is written in, Roman history as well, because this is something that happened in a Roman province, right? This was going on in a Roman province, and he was tried under Pontius Pilate and was killed there. He was crucified. McDowell makes certain to note that Tacitus misspelled the right by writing Christus rather than Christ, which was a common misspelling in that day. So there are others that McDowell mentions, and I'm not going to go into the detail of all of them for the sake of time. I mean, we're already sitting here at 18 minutes, and so they are as follows: Lucian of Samosata, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, Thalius, Phlegon, and Marabar Serapion. McDowell then moves on from the secular sources to Jewish references that were referring to the historicity of Jesus. And a lot of these came from the Talmud. And the first is the crucifixion that is referred to in the Babylonian Talmud. This constant, explanation here, this reference here refers to the hanging of Jesus, which, interestingly enough, the term hanging in that time actually referred to the hanging that actually occurs on the cross. The claim is that an announcer went out for 40 days, and what they were saying was that Jesus was about to die. He was going to be hung on the cross, and if there's anybody out there that can vouch for him, that can put any word for him in his favor, in his defense, that they should come out and do it. And according to the Talmud, that never came up. Now, the way the Talmud brings up these events actually line up with biblical scriptures on the event. Now you look at the fact that this is, Jewish here. They're not wanting to affirm the biblical truth of Jesus' resurrection and the biblical truth of the fact that Jesus Christ is Lord. They don't want to affirm that because they don't believe that. But you're looking at, they're an enemy of Christianity, yet they're here saying, yeah, Jesus did in fact exist. These are things that really did happen, and that's really interesting. So what better conclusion do we have to accept that Jesus existed? The second source refers to Jesus and his disciples. Now this source is also a Talmudic passage that states Jesus actually had 5 disciples. The Bible states that he has 12. They're saying that he had 5. You know, so Jesus did in fact have followers. They're willing to accept that as well. Also, we have the reference that Jesus was supposedly virgin born. This was something that was accepted, not that he was actually virgin born was accepted, but the fact that it was stated that he was virgin born. And what they do in the Talmudic passage is they make mockery of Jesus as well as mother, stating that she was in fact an adulteress, stating that virgins cannot be born. Virgins cannot give birth. So they're stating that she was actually an adulteress. And it's really interesting if you would take the time to read it. Again, all this comes out of the new evidence that demands a verdict through the section titled Jesus, a Man of History. Then we come to the testimony of Josephus, who also writes to the existence of Jesus Christ in more than one set. The next set of evidences that we have for the existence of Jesus as a person are the pre-New Testament creedal confessions, all of which can be found in McDowell's book starting on page 126. Now, I'm not going into all of these because there's a lot. But these are all creeds that most skeptical scholars will agree predate the writings of the New Testament, and some even agree that they came out as early as 1 to 2 years after the death of Jesus. Now, the last piece of evidence refers to the existence of Jesus, are what McDowell refers to as the Post-Apostolic writers. Now, what I call them early church fathers, but he's referring to them Post-Apostolic, meaning they came after the apostles. These writers were contemporary to the apostles in the sense that they were the next generation and raised up by the apostles. These men affirm the existence of Jesus, and they are as follows: Clement of Rome, Ignatius, Quadratus, the Epistle of Barnabas, Aristides, Justin Martyr, and Hegesippus. I'm probably murdering that last one. So, anyways, here we have all of these sources that speak to the historicity of Jesus. All of these sources are considered by historians to be historical gold because they are so close to Jesus. You have those that do not have association to Jesus claiming his existence. There lacks the benefit of even giving Jesus the time of day if he didn't even exist. Why write about a dude that didn't even exist? The only logical conclusion for that is the fact that he actually existed. You have the enemies of Jesus claiming his existence. And the Jewish community would have loved to show that Jesus in fact never existed. It would have saved them a lot of trouble. Yet here we are. They will not refute his existence. Yet there are other things that they will refute on events that supposedly occurred in his life, just like the virgin birth that we already mentioned. And then you have the creedal statements, which would not have spread like wildfire had Jesus never existed. Why in the world are you going to sit there and remember a creed saying that he was buried and that he died and that he rose again the third day of scriptures? Right? Why would you take the time to believe that? Why would you take the time to memorize that if the fact that Jesus didn't even exist? You wouldn't even mess with that. Why would you memorize something that doesn't even make sense? There's a lot of books that I've read that are fiction, but you know what? I never took the time to memorize them. Why? Because they were fiction. They didn't exist, right? So why would you take the time to memorize a creed if Jesus never existed in the first place? So lastly, you have the early church fathers, which were just the next generation after the apostles, and a lot of these who ended believing in all the way of Christianity spoke to his existence. Jesus never existed. It is doubtful that they would have ever heard of a supposed rumor of his existence in the first place if he never existed at all. You're looking at also the disciples of Jesus. These were, fishermen. They were not, the upper echelon. So it's not likely that a bunch of fishermen would get together and be like, hey, let's make a new religion and see if we can pass it on. No, Jesus actually, in fact, existed. And what the disciples come out with is what they truly believe. They truly believe in his resurrection. They truly believe that they saw him. So next week, we're going to actually discuss the deity of Jesus Christ. So now that we've determined Jesus Christ in fact existed, now we're going to discuss the deity of Jesus Christ. And there's actually, I think, a lot of evidence that supports the fact that Jesus Christ is who he says he is. And as like I said earlier, as C.S. Lewis says, Jesus Christ is either a lunatic, a liar, or he was Lord. And C.S. Lewis, who was an atheist when he went into tackling all this, he came out and this is what he said. He was Lord. He was who he said he was. So that being said, I will see you guys next video. Thanks for taking the time to watch through all this. I know it's 25 minutes is a long time. And but I really appreciate you guys coming out, watching this video and watching this with me. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next video. Hey, please, you know what, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe, and share this video. This is a good thing to get out. This is something that I think that everyone ought to discuss. And there's something about the man Jesus, the fact that 2,000 years after his existence, we're still talking about him. We're still talking about him. I think that's enough to actually take some time to learn about what's going on here and why we're still talking about him. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time here on Hauling Apologetics.